Okay. I am super duper excited because I have someone here with me today who is just such a gem and who is doing such incredible work, such needed work in our world in these times, and honestly in all times. That is work that is timeless. I would love to introduce you all to a new friend of mine who I felt, though, that I've known for far longer. And her name is Lydia. And Lydia, welcome. Could you please say hello, share yourself to the community?
Hello. I'm Lydia. I am the founder of Reself. You might recognize that name from one of Amanda's videos. Reself is a studio for conscious living. We provide guided paths and experiences to empower your authentic conscious living. And gosh, what else?
I know those are always the hardest things, are the like, who are you? It's like, of course, until you have to say it.
Right? It's like, I'm here, let's have you'll get to know me through our conversation, but that's what they tell me to say.
Yes, I love that. That's beautiful. Well, let's just talk about Reself. So, first off, the title. I have always found that title to just be like so striking, and that like it's so memorable, but I also feel that it so like beautifully encapsulates all that you do. So, I would just love to hear, how did you come up with such a cool, like, on the pulse title?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the beautiful thing is that, like, it's in the name, right? So, in order to live consciously, to flourish, to thrive, to actually, um, holistically be well, it all starts within ourselves. So the self is the key, nourishing the self, mind, body, soul, and wholeness. For wholeness is the root of that ability to live consciously, to flourish. So, um, it's funny that you called it timeless, because Reself, all of our offerings, our workshops, Recalibrate membership, and podcast, our conversations, are all at the intersection of diverse philosophies, sciences, and practices. And that is timeless. Like, I studied philosophy, and so I have such a love and reverence, and I know that we share this, Amanda. And just, I have been so driven and curious to like seek out those philosophies that help guide us in our ability to flourish, to live fully, right? And so it started, the original name, I don't think I've ever said this. The original name was Ionia, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's Greek.
I didn't know that. You never told me that. That's so interesting.
No, I know. Yes, that it was originally called that, and our whole mission was eudaimonia, which is also Greek, which means flourishing. And so that's still very much at the center of Reself. But being a philosophy devourer and lover, that was, kind of niche of a name. Um, and I wanted something that spoke to everyone. And what speaks to everyone is the self. And, one of Reself's founding principles is that that's not selfish. Taking care of ourselves, nourishing ourselves isn't selfish, it's essential. If we don't, to use a phrase I'm sure a lot of people have heard, if we don't fill our own cups up first, then we're pouring from an empty cup. Or we're depending on someone else to fill our cup. And then that cup can never actually be full because our own inner well is dry. Um, so it really is. It's really about the self in the most fundamental sense. And Reself provides in the most digestible, personal, and actionable way the ability to be immersed in those philosophies, sciences, and practices that are going to fuel that. And we do it in a way that teaches you how to self-sufficiently continue and evolve and fuel yourself. And that's really important too, because we don't want you to be dependent. We want, people come back to Reself because there's more content, there's more workshops, there's more conversations on, so many interesting topics. So it's that um I can't think of a better word, but addictive. It's like that's what's the drive to engage, and that feeling. And I'm sure that you've had this, Amanda, because I know your journey a little bit in terms of awakening. Once you start doing that and you have the feeling of, wow, I'm nourishing myself, and it's changing how I'm showing up for myself and how I'm showing up for everything I do and everyone I cross paths with. And I think that's the profound difference when you feel and then witness the shift that's happening. And that doesn't ever have to stop. I mean, the fact is, we we get old, but we never stop growing. We're meant to continually grow and evolve. Look at nature. Nothing in nature ever stops growing. It goes through cycles of death and rebirth, but the the idea is, to flourish is to grow and evolve and show up authentically. Also, I love the birds in your neck of the woods.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you do, because I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, they're really trying to have a moment, like, but I feel they're just resonating. I feel like it's an alignment here.
Oh, absolutely. That is my favorite. When I hear the birds start chirping at like 5 a.m. outside my window, I'm like, and that was, I mean, we were talking about this before we started recording. Like, that's the that was the moment for me this spring turning into summer of like, oh my God, the birds are back.
Yeah.
That one thing has been resonating with me throughout, since we really kind of got into that hard spring summer. And yeah, I love it. I love that they're here.
They are in like full harmony, and yeah, and I can see them, which is actually pretty beautiful too. We have a lot of like the red breasted, which maybe you do as well, like the red,
Yeah, definitely.
breasted. Oh my god, they're gorgeous when you see them pass by. Yeah, I love the sound too, and it is, especially both being in colder places, that transition is really so distinctive. That, and that is one of the beauties, I think, of the winter as well. In places where you have a winter, is you do actually notice when the birds are back, because it's quiet for some time.
Totally.
Yeah. So glad you love them. They'll be here, I think, for a bit. So I'm curious. So as a like with your business, when, and there may not even be a point where this happened. Like there may not have been a moment where you were like, oh, this is that moment. But I'm just curious, was there a moment in time, and maybe it could have been over the course of like a week or a couple of months, or even really just a second, where you knew like, okay, Reself, this is legitimate. This is real business, and I'm ready to go all in with this?
Ooh, that's such a good question. Well, kind of, when I started it, I wasn't ready to go all in. And things aligned in my life that continued to push me to do this and push me to, oh my god, I see one of the birds.
I
Uh, yeah, so I really I have no background in business. I think more specifically, I had no interest in business. Like I said,
Mhm.
from my philosophy education, you know, I studied a lot about capitalism and alternatives to capitalism and like the negatives of capitalism. So that I mean, that's kind of where the pendulum is right now. And
Right.
it's not to negate that there aren't negatives in the way that capitalism is done right now that are unethical and harmful to um, equality and
Mhm.
flourishing. Really, right?
Mm.
Um, but so so needless to say, I was kind of not interested in contributing to that. And yeah, things aligned. Um, and so I was just like, okay, fine, I get it. I'll do it.
Mhm.
And what was, I think, when we were doing alpha testing of the first workshop, the mindset workshop, which is available, Amanda has done it.
Mhm.
Um, hearing hearing people's feedback, like hearing how it was changing people's lives,
Mhm.
that was the moment where I at least was like, I don't it doesn't matter what I don't know.
Mhm.
I will learn that. But what
Mhm.
I do know and what I've known since I got that first iteration of reself idea in 2019 was that this is needed. And I
Mhm.
always knew that studying, and I think this is such a great lesson for anyone who is listening and has one of those ideas or something that resonates with them. Studying philosophy and through my own personal experience, I knew I saw what was needed. And I think what happens a lot of the time is that people either have an idea or they see a problem, but they say, but I can't solve it, which is what I said to myself. And it was because of people around me that, said, Lydia, that idea is valid. There's really, really something there that you should consider putting time into. And, you know, my best friend in college, like my two best friends helped me start doing some, research and whatever, market research. And even then, like I wasn't really taking it seriously. I
Mhm.
still was like, I'm going into fashion. I have, other chapters that I'm interested in looking at, and like maybe I'll get to that down the line, when I'm ready, right? Um, but we're never ready. And there's timing is a funny thing because there's never a right time, and then you know there there things align. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so, I think that's so beautiful as well for, as you said, for those who have an idea, who have an endeavor that they want to pursue, but they think, oh, I can't do it, whether I'm not
Mhm.
good enough to do it, I don't have enough resources to do it, or
Mm.
whatever it is. I do think it's so important to to just trust that if you have the ability to have the idea, then you have the ability to fulfill and to actualize the potential of that idea. And
Yes.
I also love, it's so true. I think I don't know where this idea comes from, that there is always this right time for it
Mm.
to be. I'm not sure where we have where we have been indoctrinated, at what point we just all take on this idea that there's a right time for things that we've
Mm.
done before.
Yes.
It's such an interesting question to
Yep.
ponder. But yes, that definitely answers the question. And another one that I have for you is, when it comes, and it's funny you say you were just speaking on capitalism, because I feel like it kind of like seamlessly goes into this question of, for the most part, at least here in the States, and you could probably argue across the world, business, economics, finances, all of these things were not designed to support what I would like to call beings who predominantly have more feminine energy than masculine energy. When feminine energy is more of the dominant force, and of course, we all have both
Yep.
energies in varying degrees at varying times, and they're both valuable and
Mhm.
necessary. And the world that we live in, all things related to business under a capitalistic society, especially, I
Mhm.
think is much more conducive to those who have more of a masculine dominant way of being in the world. I think it's
Mhm.
conducive to them and
Mhm.
thriving and being successful and being able to sustain the success
Mm.
once they obtain it. So,
Mhm.
my question is for you,
Mhm.
how do you balance as being as being like a CEO, as being an entrepreneur, as being a business person? How do you balance both of those energies, both of those sides
Mm.
of yourself, when it's probably easier to go with what is being done?
Mhm. Okay. Mhm.
Tap into the dominant force, the dominant energy. So how do you maintain both of those sides of yourself?
Okay. Oh my god. I literally had to cross my fingers so I remembered something I wanted to say. To your point about capitalism and the way that it was birthed and whom it was birthed by, um, I think it's really interesting when we look at um, the patterns of ancient Egypt in terms of when women rulers came into power.
Mm.
Um, I don't know if you've heard of or read, or if anyone listening has heard of or read When Women Ruled the World. It
Mm,
talks about, oh, 10 out of 10 recommend. It talks about, it looks at different female rulers of Egypt,
mhm.
and um, yeah, there's some really interesting lessons to be learned there. And I think one a key pattern is that when the um when things were in decline, that was when typically women were put into positions of power. And it's not to say, I mean, a really interesting thing that I learned from that book is like, it's not to put Egypt up on a pedestal, because even then, some of these women, I mean, they really didn't have that much power. It was kind of like a holding. Um, but there's something to be said for that, which is the recognition of the feminine bringing something to the party
Mm.
that is of value and also a saving grace. And so when we look at business and we look at, well, one, I think, what you said about earlier about the resources to start a business, it's such a valid point. And I literally was just at the vet the other day. Um, and my vet, I was talking to her about reself, and she was saying all these nice things, and then she said, "I want to start my own practice, but that would cost $1 million, so I can't."
Mm.
And that was very much the attitude I had going into starting reself, because of the way that I was envisioning it and the path that I understood in terms of venture capital investment, and if I have this big idea, how do I do that other than pump money into it and have someone give me that money and give up my equity and decision making abilities to a degree in exchange for that? And I'm so grateful that that's not the path I ended up going, because it gives me the freedom, getting into your question, of doing things how I want to do them and figuring that out for myself, especially because um I know, and we can all see the ways in which how things are done now in business, in any area, in any job that we might be in, um, there are new ways when we step out of the box
Mm.
and look at what else. So, to your point about one balancing the masculine and feminine, and you know, that whole thing within myself and within my business, I think that one thing that I've really learned is, first of all, the value of that balance, right? So, if capitalism, the way that it's been done in terms of this masculine energy of like do, push, go,
Mhm.
we need rest.
Right.
However you identify, whatever, dominant energies you feed, we that rest is essential for our ability to go.
Mm.
Um, I mean, you can look at I mean, I'm thinking like look at a marathon runner, right? They can run for a long time, but
Mhm.
they have to rest. They literally have to stop running. And um it's really important, and it's really important, and I'm sure you feel the same way about YouTube, Amanda.
Mhm.
We have so many ideas, we wanna do so many things, but
Mhm.
we can't,
Yep.
continuously go at it, otherwise we drain ourselves, and then the work becomes tedious and exhausting, and,
Mm.
we lose the reason why,
Mhm.
we start to resent, we start to but and then it also drains us of, like, all the other interests that we have that feed that creativity. Um, and so what that looks like on a day-to-day, weekly basis is um, something that I really learned recently, which I think is fascinating, is using as a woman, using the cycles of menstruation and the different phases to determine and to I mean, pick your stand in sort of guide. It could be astrology, it could be um the seasons of nature, it can be the phases of the moon, day and night.
Mm.
These are all cycles of nature, literally,
Mhm.
that we can tap into to help provide gentle structure and guidance, and an offering to us that um, for me feels right to go with. And you know that started years ago with having this realization of um, being more in tuned with the cycles of the day.
Mm.
So if it's starting to get dark out, we live in a beautiful time in which we can flip on the lights
Right.
and do whatever we want through to the time when the sun comes up again. Or we can use that as an invitation to begin to shut down.
Mm.
And for me, attuning myself to that rhythm is, I mean, there are studies on this in terms of like blue light, exposure, melatonin release, and our sleep cycles. But it's beyond that, emotionally, spiritually, it's I feel connected to the world around me. I feel very much attuned and aligned to nature, and so that is also manifested in terms of, like, using the cycles of the moon, the 2 big ones being the new moon as this opportunity for a new beginning, and the full moon as this light of, like, illuminating what's been done and looking at opportunities to, um to change what needs to change, to, starve and kill off anything that's not working. And that also then goes
Mhm.
into this idea of menstruation. And like we were talking about this earlier, but
Mhm.
if you're not having a baby, then your body literally sheds. And this idea of like killing, to use a book that we both love, Women Who Run with the Wolves,
Right.
this idea of killing off what you don't need, what's taking energy, what's draining you of all of your abilities to flourish in in yourself, in your interests, in what you're doing, what you're creating, how you show up in the world, and give that energy to everything that allows you to do that well.
Ah, that's so. Please, I'm going to just like take that entire beautiful speech and just like turn that. I'm going to somehow convert that into like an essay or like just so. Oh, that's so beautiful. Or a blog or just so beautifully said. I love that. And I'm curious, have you ever, do you ever, or do you foresee in the future imposter syndrome,
Ooh.
especially with your background having been in fashion and
Mm.
not necessarily having like an interest
Mm.
from when you were a kid wanting to, I know I want to have a business, like I know I want to do this, like kind of almost falling into this.
Mm.
You ever deal with this, like what am I doing? Am I the right person to be doing this? Can I
Ooh.
actually keep doing this? Do you ever deal with that?
That's such a great question. And I'll start with the child thing.
Mm.
So, what's really interesting, and I laugh because it's like a cosmic, it's the cosmic comedy, right? As a child, I was so interested in selling stuff. Like, it's so, but Amanda, like
Wow.
any lemonade stand, cookie stand, I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, my art,
Mm.
I even then, that was a thing. What else? So that was one thing. And then I was accepted to my college in the entrepreneurship program. I don't
Oh
know.
my gosh.
Bro, I don't know why I was even applied and accepted to that. Again, I said I had no interest in business. I also had no interest in going to college. And this is, another interesting piece is like I had no interest in going to college. I happened to go. Also was in that place of like rebelling against, the system tells me we have to go to college to do well, to get a good job. And that's not to negate the value of education at all, but I was certainly burnt out in terms of the way that the education system worked because yeah. So, no interest, never, ever, ever went to a single business class. I happened to find philosophy, and like the irony is that when I was 12, I learned about Buddhism, and I took every opportunity in school and out of school to study that philosophy and also begin to integrate that into my life and to study, figures and people that um, resonated with me that practice that tradition. But I didn't know that was philosophy. I didn't know what that was. All I knew was yes, please. And yeah, it was in an ethics class where I was like, it was that thing. It was like, this is what we need in the world. So this is what I'm going to learn. And it had nothing to do with like applying it or whatever. Like one of the most frequent questions people asked me were, what are you going to do with that though? Um, are you going to become a lawyer? Because that was like, that's, the kind of traditional path from philosophy into one of those kind of
Right.
solid careers.
Mhm.
But I didn't care. Like it was for me to learn because I wanted that. I like needed to learn wisdom. I needed someone. Yeah. Um, so the imposter thing. The funny thing is, so you brought up fashion. During COVID, and this was also when I started Reself, I really reflected on what fashion meant to me and why I wanted that career. Also as a child, and here's the entrepreneurship thing again. Like I was into fashion when I was probably 9, 10. Like I would read Vogue then, and we could talk about whether that was good for my mental health or not, but aesthetically, it was very beneficial.
Mhm.
Um, and I wanted to be a fashion designer. Like I wanted to have my own label and I wanted to do my own thing. And so it's interesting when we look at the ways in which we begin to morph these dreams and ideas, whether that was, genuinely something, it was genuinely something that I wanted as a child. And so, but then I was working for someone else's label and I wasn't even thinking, would I ever even have my own label? And so the funny thing is that the way things worked out for me, and at first it was kind of like unfortunate. It was never meant to be that I was supposed to work for someone else's business or label, and I always hated working for other people anyway, period, in other jobs that I had. Um, but that was my ego. I loved being able to say that I worked at the company that I worked, interned for and was planning to hopefully work for.
Mhm.
Um, I loved it because people could glom onto that and like respect it
Right.
just by the name. And the funny thing is, in that, there was never any imposter syndrome because I was like, my ego was like, I belong here.
Right.
Look at my clothes. Look at how I fit. But it never felt like I fit. In my internship, I was unhappy because I knew this isn't what I want to do. But
Mm.
I don't know. And then after the internship, that was when the idea for Reself came to me. And I still was like, oh, but fashion and like that path and the city and the clothes and whatever. And then COVID, and I was like, not dressing how I would normally, get dressed for the day. And I wasn't buying anything. And I was just like re-evaluating my whole relationship to that art form,
Mhm. Mm.
the market and industry of that art form. And yeah, that was kind of what I came to. And it's funny the way that there was never any idea of imposter syndrome in that. So then when I started Reself, I don't think I ever had imposter syndrome in it, but it was like I mean, everything told me I'm not. Oh my god, a bird just pooped on me.
No, no. Are you
Stop.
serious?
Oh my god, stop. It's so
No.
bad.
No, are you kidding?
Um, it's okay. It's the washing machine. That's what it's for. Um, who's up there? That's never happened to me, but every time I walk under birds, I'm like, is today the day? Is this the good luck day?
And we were just celebrating them.
I know.
Wow, the cosmic comedy.
The cosmic comedy. It's okay. But yeah, I I literally at first I was like, everything tells me I'm not qualified to do this. I don't have any business experience. Everyone says I need more degrees, I need more experience, you know, I need to be older, I need whatever, whatever. And it was really that choice then of I don't believe any of that.
Mhm.
I see value in some of it for sure. I'm always down to learn more, but you have to start where you are
Yep.
in everything, right? In if you're starting a business or if you're nourishing yourself, start where you are. I mean, Pima Chodron's book, Start Where You Are, it's
Mhm.
brilliant.
Mhm.
Don't wait to befriend yourself when you're better, when you're some, brilliant version of yourself, your higher self. You know, if we're waiting for something, and this was the funny thing about timing that we were talking about, if we're waiting for something, it's never going to come because we're always going to be waiting. I mean, the only thing that is ever real is the present moment. The
Mm.
past was the present moment, the future will be the present moment, but we can never reach any of those things
Mm.
unless it's in the present moment.
Mm.
And so it was really that choice of seeing my own value and um defining my own or like pulling out limitations that I was placing on myself or believing in that constricted me. And so I think that in terms of the future, I also think that I'm in a place in myself where I'm so grounded in myself, and I've done so much of the healing that I needed to do, where so long as that groundedness remains, I don't I don't think it would be a problem. I think the only problem from there is at what point, and this is like where awareness and discernment starts to happen, is at what point is this my ego? And at
Mm.
what point is this not serving me? Am I chasing something for the wrong reasons? Am I pursuing something for reasons that are other than what I'm um putting out? And it's
Mm.
yeah, and I just think, you know, I think I would have had imposter syndrome, and this is where it started, if I had gone the VC path, venture capital investment path, because then it's like, why do I deserve an $1 million investment, a $500,000 investment, $250,000 investment, whatever it may be? Why do I deserve that and someone else doesn't?
Right.
Why? Um, yeah, that I think was where that felt in the beginning of my journey, and then it was really when I decided to do it myself and do it where I am that it kind of went away. And so the ability to grow and scale and evolve completely at my own will and direction, I think will protect me from that.
Mm. Oh, so beautiful. I love that. And you mentioned with first the groundedness. It's so apparent the work that you have done. Oh, obviously, just over the course of your life and the person that you are, you seem to have like an innate affinity towards learning, towards growing. But it's also so clear in just being, even just virtually being in your presence, there is such a clarity. Almost, that's the best that I can think of. There's such a certain like sense of clarity that just radiates from you, and it's so just clear that
Mhm.
you have done so much work, whether that's been just the result of who you are as a person and your interests,
Mhm.
or through intentional healing, and through understanding the importance. And speaking of healing, I want to bring us to our last question, which is, when it comes to healing, because when I think reself, like if someone said, "What is reself about?" and you can only tell me in one word, I would be very upset that they're putting limitation on me and what I can say. But if I
Mhm.
had to, I would think healing. I would say healing. That's the
Mm.
first word that came to mind for me, and that continues to come to mind.
Mm.
And I'm curious for you, what does healing look like? I think for so many people, healing is also this destination that we get
Mhm.
to, which kind of goes back to waiting on the right time for something to manifest, for something to express
Mhm.
itself. But I think so many people just think, okay, if I lose these 20 pounds, if I get this $200,000, if I get this car, like if I get these things, if I reach this destination, I will be healed, all will be complete. And I've always been somewhere in between. I think there are maybe like points, and
Mhm.
that it's ultimately just a journey. And I'm
Mhm.
curious, what are your thoughts when it comes to just healing? What does that look like to you and for you? And
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay. Totally a journey, a never-ending journey. Everything is a mirror and an opportunity to see the ways in which that we have blocked ourselves from love, from life, from the depth and profoundness that is the human experience. And um that I don't think that ever ends. Um and on the clarity thing, thank you. That's such a beautiful compliment, and I am so grateful to to you know to bring that in my presence.
Mhm.
And it's not it's not some magical thing. It's that is the result of consistently nourishing myself and having solid practices and routines and like that are fundamental to my little friend there, to starting my day and ending my day, and like that return to self first in the morning, grounding in myself, grounding in my my philosophies, my practices, um being aligned with my vision and my values, and at the end of the day reflecting on, okay, what went well today, what am I grateful for, and how can I show up more authentically next time or tomorrow, or um yeah. And healing, I think, looks like, I think it's a decision.
Mm.
um and like you said, there's never a right time, and I think that we might fumble and stumble into our healing and awakening and nourishing of self through sometimes those things like you said of for example, like losing weight. um but then we can begin to look at, what's the belief under this?
Mhm.
Why do I think that this has to happen in order to be lovable, to be beautiful? What if I and I love this book. I probably recommended it to you, and if you haven't read it, and if anyone listening is curious specifically about this kind of subject, and I think just in general, we all have a body. It's called The Body's Not an Apology. It's a
Ooh.
brilliant, brilliant book. Just that name is brilliant. And um yeah, I think part of healing is taking a radical responsibility um for self, and for noticing the ways in which we put off loving ourselves, living our purpose, being authentic. Um yeah, and being willing to look at the uncomfortable things and sit in discomfort and reach for the help that we need, and get back up when we fall down. And yeah, I mean, the thing in my journey that really made a difference was deciding that it's no one else's responsibility but my own, you know? I mean, one
Mm.
of the most poignant moments was that, I was lucky enough to be in therapy and have a resource of therapy, but it completely shifted when I had this epiphany years ago of, um, I'm done waiting for someone else to give me the answers and to give me what I need.
Mm.
And I think that's like the root of that self-sufficiency, is if I can learn, and this is part of reself, is if I can teach you how to find for, reach for, create, your own practices and structure and walk the path, then you can do that yourself. And
Mhm.
that's it's like you can give a man a fish or you can teach him to fish. And then if I teach you to fish, then you will teach your friends, your family, simply by example, or if they ask, and you'll teach your children if you choose to have children. And that's how that's how we evolve our species is through that, because there is, you know, it's that paradigm, that dichotomy of intergenerational trauma, for example, unhealed wounds, sticking to this idea of healing, and what happens when I heal these wounds and my wounds, so I'm no longer perpetuating them. And then I also have these resources and skills to pass on to future generations. Even if you don't have children, as a teacher in the classroom, right? Changing how we educate, changing what the education system gives to children beyond knowledge, or different forms of knowledge, and looking at what are the goals of educating children, what are the goals of raising children, how do we raise a fully actualized, fully developed being. And that's how I truly believe, and you know, that's how we shift society.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And that, yes, as a teacher, that really resonates so much with me. And that, and in particular, working with middle school students who are in that weird, like, kind of, but also very much a child, but so much that I learned. Well, I learned so much about myself from them, my own strengths and weaknesses, but also the greatest takeaway I always get year after year, after I've just stressed so much about whether or not I'm teaching them this curriculum based
Yeah.
off who knows whose standards ultimately.
Mhm.
Once I've finished that, I realized that, like, the thing that they actually take away and that they keep is just who I was to them, and the relationship that they had with me or did not have with me, and the relationship that they saw me having with them, with their peers, and with my peers.
Mhm.
Oh, that really just resonates so deeply, and
Mm.
as always, so beautifully said.
Wait,
And
wait. You do such an important job in society, Amanda, and that role that you play to children, literally in a sense being their parent outside of the home, because you really are contributing to their development beyond, like you said, beyond curriculum. It's so valuable and it's so important and it's so beautiful. I know, I'm sure you've had these experiences too, but when I think about the teachers that I loved
Mhm.
and that gave me something beyond what we were studying or added to what we were studying, it was really that relationship and that being seen and being cared about. I think like you said, middle school is such a hard age.
Ugh.
It's so difficult, and to have a teacher like you that is so conscientious. All of the nature is on me today. That's so conscientious and caring and values a being at any age is so important, and not just like, oh, this is a 12-year-old person, but period, this is a person. And what I do to them is not just teaching them, but growing them in, or not growing them. And yeah, it's so beautiful and meaningful, truly.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm very much a fan. Not all parts, but most parts I'm a major fan of, and would highly recommend. Just working with children in any capacity can really just teach you so much about life and about yourself. I mean, they're like the ultimate mirrors of
Yeah.
who you are and where you are, and yeah. So, okay. first and foremost, thank you so much, Lydia. You are just such a ray of light, and it just always feels so warm, and it's just such a beautiful experience every time that we connect. And if you're not already as like obsessed with her as I am, I don't know what you're doing. I cannot approve of that lifestyle choice if you are just not as head over heels.
Oh,
So, for those who are, as I am, can you please share how can we find you? How can we keep in contact? What are the socials? Could we learn?
yes, ma'am. Okay, so Reself has an Instagram. We are not using it. It's just a landing page. This is part of my little experiment about social media and business because you, as I will say, you can tune into our podcast and listen to our episode on life without social media, as that is a choice that I have made since I was in high school. And I have to be true to that in our business choices as well. Um, so that you can find us there. It's reself.ing. Um, but go to our website, www.reself.me, and you can access all of our conversations. That's the podcast as it goes for free. And then try the mindset workshop. There's a free trial. Amanda offers a 15% discount with her code Amanda at checkout. Um, and dive in there. There is nothing more important than our mindset and the quality and content of our thoughts, our beliefs. If you want to do something for your healing, that is a beautiful place to start. Amanda and I are cooking up something wonderful with this workshop for her amazing community, you guys. And yeah, keep that on your radar. And yes, if you want to connect with us, stay in conversation, sign up for our newsletter. We send out nice little nourishing nuggets. And that's kind of our own social media, but it's personal, it's intimate, and it's intentional.
Absolutely. They're so truly. And I am someone who I never subscribe to newsletters. I always block newsletters. I do not believe in newsletters, and I love the Reself newsletters. And that was actually one of the things among many. Love the workshops. I also love the playlist. I think the
I
play
listened to that before we jumped on this call.
genius. The playlist idea is so genius. But I also remember thinking like these are perfect newsletters because it's something of substance and it matters and it doesn't feel like digital clutter. Like it's actually you're
Mm.
getting something beyond
Mhm.
just another thing to delete. So
Mhm.
highly, and I will never recommend a newsletter to anyone. That needs to be clear, but would
So honored.
highly recommend. And as someone who has been working myself on the workshops and loving the playlist, again, I just think that's so genius. That's like, oh, that's so good. Because music, it sticks with you and it evokes so much. Anyway,
Mhm.
it's genius. But
No, wait, totally. Totally. There's a reason that we do that. It's for that reason. And it's like whatever we're listening to is again, it's putting thoughts, energy into our mind and being. And so that's, you know, having an intentional way to nourish that lightness and consciousness, like everything is considered when I make those playlists, from lyrics to emotion to energy to start to finish journey, yeah, so totally dive into those are free. You can find those on the website. um and if you sign up for our newsletter tonight, when this is live goes out, we are sending out a really juicy words of wisdom on Monday. So you can jump on that bandwagon.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much, Lydia, for joining me today. And I hope that we can have like a part 2, part 25, like down the road. I would love to have you back and join this community. And I cannot wait for what we are cooking up and mixing up behind the scenes. And thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you everyone to watching. And as always, stay safe, be well, and I will see you all soon.
Thank you, Amanda. Bye, everybody.